You're watching Unrendered on IKTV. You can follow us on Twitter at iConcepts. My guests on this edition of the program are Dr. Jozelle Miller and Dr. Claudius Davis. We were just about wrapping up that whole feeling of numbness, that as the first stage of feeling the progress or the progression to recovery. And I see here that as stage 2, it talks about the return to feelings, and it says that not everybody who goes through some kind of primary trauma is really required to see a counselor. Some just relive the thing, they talk, and that way they get through it. But there's this understanding that the more that feelings can be encouraged, the better, as in feeling the thing. The more you feel, the more you heal. That is the saying here. In your experience, Dr. Miller, I'm going to start with you. You've done recently, I'm not talking about this one, but a year ago you did the whole, dealing with the whole matter of the Christmas floods, and now you're doing this one. Is that true? The more you feel, the more you heal?
Yes. The thing about our Vincentian society, and probably most Caribbean societies, unlike that of the US, we'll find then that a lot of persons are not inclined to talk about their feelings here, especially males.
Right.
We have been socialized to think that, okay, once you ask someone, how are you? I'm fine, I'm okay, that's it. They don't go into much description in terms of what they're feeling or what they're experiencing at the time. So what we have been trying to do is to get persons to express themselves. What are you feeling at this minute? You know, a lot of the persons that you would have seen both in 2013 and now have also physical issues that they have to deal with. So even those at the hospital, when we say, how are you feeling, you will get the response, okay, I'm not in pain. Right. Which is good because they're speaking of the physical part, but then we want them to tap into your emotional part.
So it's easier for them to tell you about what they feel physically.
But emotionally, they are unable to express exactly how they're feeling. The most you might hear that they're feeling sad, which, okay, we can work with that.
Is that a socialization issue, as you say, or is that just across the board? I'm going to ask, you can finish, but I was going to ask Dr. Davis to chip in there.
I think the socialization issue comes from the inability or probably unwillingness of persons to go deeper. Because we are at a point now where persons ask you how you're doing, and before you can even utter a word to respond, they're gone. Everybody, our whole society now is about being on the go. People send you a message, how are you, and HRU. Nobody says to wait anymore to find out. So I even get upset. I always tell people, if you're going to ask me how I'm doing, you need to stand up and wait for me to answer.
Right.
But people are not really prepared. It's just a matter of passing time,
Is that different in the U.S. in terms of people expressing emotion?
I think that U.S., I think we're more open to talk about our problems. But for me, I think we have to look at feelings in terms of that there are good feelings and there are bad feelings. And we need to be able to identify which is which, because either we're being powered either by bad feelings or being powered by good feelings. And in this particular tragedy, you have not only the people themselves who actually went over in the vehicle, but you have the extended family, you have family members who themselves are now under the grip of that situation, and they are developing bad feelings.
Yes.
And those bad feelings manifest themselves in overly anxious. We see depression, some are very depressed. Some are now beginning to sleep a little more, they feel sluggish, they feel weak. They really don't have access to their full mental capabilities because of that. And so we really need to ask ourselves, what about these feelings and what's powering them? And I was talking to someone today, and I had to outline to them, look, you've made some major changes as well. Not only did you have lost someone or had this event, but you stop eating. You have maybe one meal a day when you're accustomed to having 3 meals a day. You're not sleeping
Having less
anymore.
sleep.
You know what
Or
I
none
mean?
at all, yeah.
You can't think. So there's something happening here, which is coming up with bad feelings. Now they're irritable. They really don't want to be talked to. They don't want to be bothered. So there's a whole vicious cycle of bad feelings that are being, I don't want to say cultivated, but actually it's happening. And these people are literally going to get sick. So not only are we going to have the actual victims themselves who are going to be struggling with post-traumatic stress issues, but then you're going to have parents and siblings who themselves are going to become more depressed and more anxious and wouldn't be able to function in school. Because if the brain shuts down and you're depressed and you're overly anxious, then you can't process information, and yet we're going to expect them to perform at the same level prior to this disaster. And that's going to cause some parents to start picking up drinking as a way to cope with this situation.
Or drinking more.
Or drinking more
Yes.
to cope with this, or we may even see promiscuous behavior coming up out of this because people need to feel alive. So there are going to be an array of behaviors. And so when we talk about feelings, I think we need to help these individuals to understand that there are some feelings you don't need to live with, and there are some feelings you need to cultivate. And what we may need to do is, what I've been trying to do, is to get them to focus on the good side. Because there was a good side before all of this. Because you can't get people to the good side unless you go back to what they have. Their own issues, their own stuff. There's a foundation of good time. We used to laugh together.
Yes.
Once you get them back there, then you resurrect those good feelings, then the bad feelings eventually are going to subside. So I think feelings are critical, but I think we need to begin to help folks to decide, you know, which one is driving you. Is it the bad feelings? When you start cursing people, start, you know, avoiding people, don't want to get up in the morning, don't want to have showers, you know, and stuff like that. So we need to be aware that, yes, it's critical that we own, and incidentally, and this is not just a U.S. thing, it's basically all of us. I mean, even, you know, if I'm not in a good day, you know, I don't want to eat. But then what happens to the brain?
Right.
You know, I'm going to deprive the brain. Therefore, I can't function at full blast. So,
but just
yes,
to
go ahead.
interject there, one of the things that I realized with, because we're dealing with young people, teenagers, and one of them said to me that I want to feel thankful. And I said, so why don't you? Because, and then she says, because, you know, my cousin didn't make it.
So it's guilt.
And
you feel guilty feeling thankful.
You know, that I said it's okay to feel thankful because you're alive, and it's okay to be happy that you're alive. And don't allow anyone to make you feel bad about the fact that your life was spared. And, you know, as a people, when we go and we look for these children, or we try to see them or to talk with them, don't make them feel guilty about the fact that their life has been spared. It's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
Yeah.
Tell me how much, and as we're talking about guilt, and we're talking about, you know, the whole, where these feelings come back in, after we've gone through the numbness stage, how much people have self-imposed guilt, not because they've survived and somebody's died, but I'm talking about people who weren't even involved in the accident, but may see that, or may think that there's something that they could have done differently that morning to prevent or avoid, if not the whole incident, some people getting on that van. How much of that are you experiencing?
Quite a bit, actually. There's always going to be the question of what if. What if I've done this, if I woke up a bit later, if I, you know, I hurried a bit more than I would have gone before. And we can't really take the time to process all of these what if questions, because in the end it gets us actually nowhere. Because ultimately, if something was meant to happen, can we say then that, you know, having moved, you know, slower, it would not have happened?
Right.
We don't know. So it's just that we need to allow persons to forget about all the things that could have, and just simply look at what has happened and say to yourself now, okay, I am in this situation, how do I move forward from here?
Tell me a bit about the methodology that you guys use. I mean, I don't want to necessarily have a lesson in how you do your trade, you know, psychology, but what are the sorts of things that you do to counsel people? What's the methodology that you use?
Some of what I was trying to do today, part of what I was trying to do was to get some of the students to begin to write a journal, to begin to recall positive moments, get them to see that humor is who they are, part of who they are. There's one young lady who, she said, I asked her, I said, how does people remember you? How do they know you, your peers, your friends? I always make them laugh. Great, let's talk about that. Let's begin to write down some jokes, because they're going to want to be able to hear some jokes from you. Because I said they're going to be very uncomfortable, first of all. They don't know what to say to you. They don't know how to approach you, right? But you can take control, because a lot of this has to do with control. Mom's going to have to take control, siblings going to have to take control, and we're going to have to empower these victims to begin to take control of their space. And part of that is to do what they do best, and it's to be themselves. And one of the things that shame does is that it causes us to go into hiding. And so a lot of parents are going to feel this strong sense of shame and guilt, and ultimately, you know, if you hit my car, I may slug you out. I may take a baseball bat and trash your car.
Right.
But in a situation like this, where does the parents turn?
Who do you turn your anger on? Yes.
They have to turn inwardly. And ultimately that shame and guilt are going to come out in the form of depression and anxiety, and they themselves eventually are going to become sick. I would guess about 85% of the people who are in hospitals that are being treated with medical symptoms are really psychologically driven.
So they're just physical manifestations of what's going on with the mind then.
Right. And so I think it's really important that we begin to, you know, get these students to begin to see that there was a life before this.
What do you say, and in any situation there'll always be cynics, there'll always be people who, as much of a crisis this is, there are always going to be the one or two people who would look at your work as, you know, and be cynical about
waste
it.
Of time.
Waste of time. What the hell are y'all coming up here for? You know, that sort of thing. How do you deal with that? Well, first of all, are you experiencing any of that at all?
Not at this minute, but I remember in 2013 when we went to one of the shelters, someone made a comment like, why are you coming? These just people just coming to talk, and we, you know, they're going to give us a house, we want a house, X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Which is true. If we look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, if someone is homeless or hungry, they don't want anybody speaking to them about deeper things.
Right.
Which is true. You have to satisfy the basic things first before you can get to that point. But for this time around, persons are actually seeking out this sort of service, because they realize that this is something that I can't deal with on my own, and I have to start talking about it. I have to find someone who can help me make sense of what just happened.
Do you think, and I am going to ask a question coming to the end of this segment here, and I'm not trying to make a direct comparison, but I guess it's some sort of comparison. Looking at the December floods, there was loss of life, but there was loss of life that was more or less scattered. Some in Buckerman, some, you know, you had 3 or so people, I can't remember, or 5 people in one house in Rosebank, and somebody in the Windward. This is concentrated. This event is concentrated. It's one minivan carrying people from the same village, relatives. Is that more traumatic? If we can sort of make some sort of scale and judge it, does that lend itself to something more difficult to deal with?
I think that, you know, when you have children, I think it's easy for people, irrespective of your social standing, your social class, to walk in that shoe, to identify that could have been your child in that vehicle. And so it doesn't matter where you are around the world, in a situation like this, people are going to be moved, irrespective
Yes.
of your class, because it's coming home. It's about our children.
Yes.
And I think this is part of that. We're talking about school children who are on their way to school.
This is what you'd say underscores this tragic event even more, because school children, school children,
Yes.
were mainly the victims. If not, I'm not sure. They're all the victims of the 5 people and the 2
Yes.
missing. Are they all school children?
School children.
So they're just 100% school children. Okay, let's hold it there in this segment, and when we come back, we look at the stages of the recovery. When we come back. This is Unrendered on IKTV. More with my guests when we come back.